All right, Bigfoot Society, welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Comments, where I share some interesting comments that have come on in over on YouTube and also some interesting emails that have come in. These are things that you have not heard in previous episodes. Sometimes the Tales from the Comments and the emails are as good, if not better, than the episodes that you hear. So let's get right into it. Some of these I'm just going to shout out in hopes that the person that left the comment hears this episode and you need to contact me, bigfootsociety@gmail.com, because I want to hear more. Here we go. All right. First one is from the William Morris episode, or the one where he talks about the Sasquatch. He found the bear that was dispatched by the Sasquatch. Um, Lynn says in a comment, had a couple on my mining claim. There's not a lot to that comment, but if you had a couple Sasquatch on your mining claim, I would love to hear about it. So, BigfootSociety@gmail.com. Here's another one that's interesting. Going to zoom in a little bit. User Mark says they're in Alabama too, and if people knew what was walking around the woods near their homes, there would be chaos and panic, for sale signs going up, and no telling what else. Yes, they are real, and many people who have pics of them won't show them because they don't want the MIB coming up in their yard and telling them they have to leave their home and move out. MIB, of course, stands for Men in Black, not the movie with Will Smith, but the actual people that tend to show up after you see something. So if you've experienced something like this, or you've seen MIB, or I've heard sometimes gentlemen or individuals will show up in plaid, um, let me know. You can send me an email, bigfootsociety@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment on this video, and you can let me know if you've had an encounter like that after you've seen a Bigfoot or another cryptid. Coming up next, user Gregory says, I'm a combat vet of Afghanistan, and I've had encounters in two different states. Alaska, where I was stationed for 7 years, and was my introduction with no warning to the subject, and in Alabama, where I'm from and now live. There's another Alabama one. I had no encounters prior to Alaska, and now I'm back in Bama, and within 4 months of moving back, I had an up-close encounter in my yard of all places. He came sliding down a tall pine tree, probably 40 feet to the bottom limb, shaking the pine too, and started jabbering at me as he descended. As he descended it like a fire pole, stuck the landing on 2 feet, and we locked eyes. We were no more than 20 feet apart. It was orange or ginger haired, with patchy gray skin and pink freckles, probably 5'6" or so, and decently built. Eyes like red, nose pit amberish, and broke eye contact. And turned to his right and took off running on 2 feet, then on all fours jabbering and slinging up saplings and undergrowth as it disappeared from sight. The point I'm making is no situation I was in while in Afghanistan scared me as much as being that close and seeing a being that is not supposed to exist. Even though I had a previous encounter in Alaska, there's something in our DNA that knows something that our minds don't. This is just a summary. I could go into finer details about him and them. Well, Gregory, I've read a few of your comments in the past. You sound like you have a very interesting story. I'd love to talk to you, have a chat with you for the podcast. If you want to reach out, it's bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Here's an interesting comment, and I put this in here just so to see if other people have heard of this too. This is from the 4-year standoff with Sasquatch in Rainier, Oregon, which is a very popular episode. And user Kim says, keep hearing about Bigfoot around power plants. Yeah, so do I. I've heard it a few times. Let me know in the comments what your hypothesis about why do Bigfoot keep hanging out around power plants? Could it be related to why they keep seeing UFOs around power plants? I don't know. Let me know if you have any hypotheses or what you think about that in the comments. From the Uncovering the Truth About Alaskan Bigfoot with Tim episode, I believe that's when I talked to the trucker, user Rudy says, I went to school with a lot of Alaskan natives back in the 60s and early 70s. I think now of encounters they had because they were in all areas of Alaska. So this is one of those that, Rudy, I would love you to reach out to me to share anything you've probably heard over the years. You can reach me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com if you're listening to this episode. Also, that goes to anyone that has stories they've heard over the years. Some of our best episodes on Bigfoot Society have been with individuals that have written down stories over 30, 40 years, and they're willing to share those now. So if you're a person who has uh, written down the Bigfoot stories, or people come to you with their stories year after year, and you've got a ton of them to share, help the community out, and you can contact me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. You can also, hold on, I got an idea. Rolling thing for the YouTube audience. So if you're watching the video, you can see caller text 515-809-0165 to share your story. I made it so easy for you. And also bigfootsociety@gmail.com. So let's continue. Here's an interesting comment that came in again on the William Morris episode, Terror Gripped Me When I Saw It. User Liz says, are there women who have had experiences like this, or is it dangerous for women? I've had one very brief experience while hiking alone in Forest Park in Portland, Oregon. A fist-sized rock came skipping across the brush toward me in a way that seemed like it was thrown. I looked up and had a glimpse of a distinct-looking face. It didn't look like the stereotypical Sasquatch pictures I'd seen. Later, I saw a picture painted on a building that looked exactly like it. That made me think maybe it was something. I was very light and happy before that happened. It got my heart beating pretty fast. There were some other hikers nearby with a dog soon after, and I didn't see it again. I didn't feel like I was in danger, more of a mischievous feeling towards me, but I hiked pretty fast out of there. It's a pretty wild story. And if you could, Liz, if you could send me a picture of what you think the face looked like, I would love to see that picture. Bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And also, if you are a woman who's had a encounter with Bigfoot, a strange one like this, feel free to reach out. You can leave it in the comments, or you can email me as well. Here's another comment that came in on the William Morris Terror Gripped Me When I Saw It episode. Charlie says, great stories. Please don't be descriptive enough to guide the evil Gov or BFRO or others that want to harm these creatures. You have to know this is happening, so please stop to protect them somewhat. I listen to thousands upon thousands and have heard BFRO and Gov go in and massacre these things after descriptions of locations are made. Best channel for stories, by the way. Shame you don't do video podcasts with videos along with this. Okay, so a few things. I'm pretty sure the BFRO is not going in and massacring Bigfoot. Yeah, I'm going to say 100% that's not happening. If you have heard interesting accounts of the government going in and massacring Bigfoot, I would love to hear about it. Or if you can prove me wrong on any of the things I've said regarding this comment, go ahead and you can send me an email, or you can drop a comment on this video to let me know about what I should know, because I'm pretty sure the BFRO is not massacring Bigfoot. But hey, I don't know it. I don't know everything, but I don't know. Prove me wrong, I guess. Let's continue. Here's an interesting comment that came in on the 4-year standoff with Sasquatch in Rainier, Oregon episode. The most striking thing about Sasquatch's howl, beside the fact that it doesn't sound like anything else, is how loud it is. The howl of a large male could literally shatter your eardrums if you were right next to it. I only heard it once and almost hurt my ears from 100 yards away. If you've had an interesting reaction to a Bigfoot howl that was close to you or really loud, share it in the comments. Did it affect you in any way emotionally? Did it affect you physically in a way that still sticks around today? I would love to hear. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing in the comments, you can also send me an email as well. Continuing on. Same video, 4-year standoff. There's another comment that came in from Vihiho. Vihiho. I think that's the username. We'll go with it. Simply splendid. Thank you. With a large amount of emojis afterwards. Roses and pretzels and fires. After the Mount St. Helens explosion, they did find, I'm going to say, dispatched Sasquatches around the area. That's dispatched is to not trigger any algorithms on certain platforms. So here's the thing. Everyone talks about how they find Bigfoot or Sasquatch after the Mount St. Helens explosion, or they are black SUVs come in, they put them in the back, and then they drive away, or someone sees a helicopter with a Sasquatch under its tarp, all sorts of stuff. Those are the stories you always hear, right? Those are the campfire tales. I have yet, after 5 years, been able to actually hear a solid story that proves that that is not a campfire tale. So, my challenge to the listeners, if you have an actual situation that you saw, or you can give me the contact info for someone who saw this happen, where they found dispatched Sasquatch or Bigfoot around the Mount St. Helens area after the explosion, you can reach out. You probably won't want to put it in the comments, I'm guessing, if it's actually legit. But you can email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Here's another comment from the same, of course, 4-year standoff from Gabriel. Expletive. I live in Washington State, and we would drive up to the town Cougar next to Mount St. Helens to 4x4 power line trails. I've also heard the whoops. I just don't know what I was hearing until I went on my Bigfoot quest. They are out there, folks. Uncle Sam hasn't just been lying about UFOs. He's been lying about a lot of things. It's time for us to crawl out of our cribs. Very interesting. Gabriel, if you know more, please reach out to me. You can email me at the email that I've been saying over and over again. And listeners, if you know something where you think that Uncle Sam or the government might know more about Bigfoot than they're letting on, why don't you put it in the comments or send me an email? I'm sure at least a few of you have experience being in the military and may have even seen one around a base or on a base. So please reach out and let's see what we can find. Here's an interesting one that came in on Dogman Unleashed and Being Silenced by the MIB with Al. This is a recent episode. User Lisa says, "Hey Al, if you read this, could you please answer a question for me? I was wondering if you ever seen short black cloaked hooded entities that move extremely fast during your investigations." Well, that sounds pretty scary. That sounds like a bad news bears. Maybe they're Jawas from Star Wars was my first thought. Or maybe they're midget Bigfoot wearing a cloak. or maybe there's something we don't really want to mess with. Anyways, if you've seen one of these, let me know in the comments or send me an email. But you should probably contact Al because he's more into that sort of thing. Here's another comment where I would love the person to reach out to me. User Jeff from We Were Chased Out of the Iowa Woods by Four Bigfoot had a strange thing happen to me bow hunting in northeast Iowa, Clayton County. Jeff, if you hear this, please send me an email, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. That area in northeast Iowa is super squatchy, as we all know. And I would love to hear what happened to you. I bet it was pretty wild. User Jazzy on, I believe this is on the 4-year standoff. Well, don't cut down those trees. I saw a Bigfoot in the Florida Panhandle the year before Harry and the Hendersons came out. I was a child. I don't care if people believe me. With all the sightings and all the other things we've seen in the skies and ocean, I don't find it hard to believe at all. Life on this planet is weird. What's so hard to believe about that? I believe that. And I would love to know more about your Bigfoot sighting in the Florida Panhandle that happened the year before Harry and the Hendersons came out. Contact me. You know the email. Here's a fun one that came in, of course, 4-year standoff with Sasquatch and Rainier. User Amber says the feds buy up all properties with cryptid activity. This is wildly reported or widely reported. Okay, so here's the thing. I haven't heard this yet, Amber, but I would love to hear about it. So if you're a person that knows of a situation where the federal government or the feds bought up a property with cryptid activity, and maybe I just haven't heard of this and everyone else has, but please put it in the comments. Put all the information you know about it. What state, what area, when it was bought, what the cryptid was. And I'm guessing if this is real, you probably won't want to put it in the comments. So, of course, you can email me at you know where. Ah, yes. Okay. Here's the long one. And I'm going to read this one in hopes that we'll see how people react. So, this is from user Russell on 4-year standoff with Sasquatch and Rainier. I've had a lot of interaction with them and have seen them many times, but never up close like this man has. I can see how intimidating that must have been. I agree that it's impossible for anyone to realize how big they are until you've seen one. I've seen 9 and 10 footers before. I'm sure they weigh over 1,000 pounds when they achieve that size. I believe the whole thing was the trees more than anything else. That was their territory and you were changing it. They may have been there for many generations. I watched the sensitives say that they can get energy from the trees. Trees are full of water, and that makes them semiconductors. Sasquatch are masters of energy manipulation, and I have to believe that they need trees to recharge. Also, power lines are known to be frequented by them, probably for the same reason. They might live very long, and so there might be those of them alive who have witnessed our decimation of their natural habitat. They did not blame the children for what their dad did, so that is why they never messed with the children. I believe those 2 men still living there have made contact and might get along with them. Treat them with respect and they will do the same for you. And that's how it works. They could have smashed that home and dispatched everyone with ease if they wanted to. It's too bad that there is so much misunderstanding. Consider this: we go into their generational land, clear it, build, and then we get upset at them because they respond in an emotional way. They will reflect your emotions back to you. I presented myself a few years ago and asked telepathically, what do you have to show me? They've shown me so much. I've had some absolutely mind blowing experiences. And I call them the shaman of the woods. I love them. Thank you for the show. It's important to air our encounters, both good and bad. Very curious. Most of the Bigfoot that I've heard about in Iowa are about 7 to 8 feet tall. I'm guessing in a probably on the coast, probably up north, they're going to get a little bigger. But if you've seen one that is 9, 10 foot tall, maybe even more tall? Let me know in the comments. And what do you think of what Russell says here? Do you think that's why they're attached to or drawn to power line cables, power line poles? Let me know. Here's a comment from Tales from the Comments number 2. User married says this channel is currently my favorite Bigfoot channel. Well, thank you. I think the 4-year standoff area is a Bigfoot area for sure. They're everywhere, including near housing estates. So in the Pacific Northwest Oregon, why not? There's a Bigfoot area when they are even in England, Russia, Europe, China, Australia, all with different names, but same theme. They're everywhere. So I have no doubt where the guy described them near Rainier. I looked at a map, and although there are a couple of houses, it's still rural where he described. And I agree with you. I've looked at that map on Google Maps as well. And I think that we still have some Bigfoot activity up in that area that's called out on the 4-year standoff video. And I'll let you know if everything works out. There's more to the story that has never been shared than has ever been shared on any other show or platform. So stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss anything. Fingers crossed that is coming up. It's in the works. Here's just a nice comment. I like to share some nice comments sometimes. The shocking reality of Bigfoot attacks in Montana. User Drem says, love this newfound channel. Keep it up, dude. Well, thanks. I do it for y'all. And the one way or one reason I do it is to give a platform for those who have had encounters to share them in a safe and respected environment. I've also found over the last year that a lot of people tell me that they have physical issues, they can't get to sleep at night, and it's comforting to be able to listen to shows like this and to have a lot of contact to go through so they can actually go to sleep. So if I can help in that way, that's my way to help. Also, if you're listening to this because your spouse is and you're not a big fan and you dislike my voice, I get it. I apologize. Hopefully your spouse that's making you listen to this will buy you flowers or a beer or something, or a soda, a pop, whatever. Thanks for listening. Here's a fun one that came in on Sasquatch Stories of Western North Carolina by user Brad. I live in Smoky Mountains near Dollywood. Remember when the mountains were burned a few years ago? Yeah. My farm, since the fire, has become infested with Bigfoot. Please interview me. I've got many encounters. Brad, you don't have to tell me twice. I would love to hear about how your farm has become infested with Bigfoot since the fires. So please reach out, bigfootsociety@gmail.com, where you can put more comments in the comments of this video. But I already know that the Smoky Mountains is super squatchy. So let's hear about what's happening on your farm. Here's a fun one. And this one is actually, I'm already starting to get emails back and forth from the individual, but figured, hey, I've already got it in the docket to share. So user The Solid Rock says, I'm from Quebec and I live surrounded by wilderness and I've got some strange things happening lately. And I found a petrified Bigfoot head and 2 feet. If you can imagine my feeling right now, hit me up. Stay tuned. We are chatting back and forth and we'll see what comes of this one. But Solid Rock, thank you for leaving that comment. Could be an interesting. Back to 4-year standoff with Sasquatch near Oregon. User Sydney says, I had experiences back in the early 80s when I lived in New York State. They just watched. One time we saw a baby one up in a tree. We got out of there quick. Back then, you couldn't talk to anyone about it. They would think you were crazy. So I never talked about it for 20 years. I became obsessed with reading books, movies, anything Sasquatch. Sydney, I would love to talk to you about your experience in the early 80s, about how you saw a baby Sasquatch up in a tree. Feel free to reach out or you can share more in the comments. this is a safe and respected area for you to share what happened to you. Here's a fun one that came in from user Ruin Temple. And every once in a while, we get things that are not Bigfoot related here. So here we have one that's not Bigfoot related. Pterosaur, not pterodactyl. Pterodactyls are a specific species of pterosaur, there's no way that your average eyewitness would know how to successfully ID a pterodactyl from other species of pterosaur because they all have similar traits depending on if they're the older, smaller species or the younger, larger species. Not a flying reptile, but when I was a kid, I saw a giant dragonfly like insect about 18 inches long flying around and above the field where I was in the bed of a truck while my family was harvesting pears from the tree in the middle of said field. I didn't look into it until a year or two ago, but when I did, come to find out, there actually did used to exist a giant dragonfly insect about around 18 inches long over 1,000,000 years ago. That's very interesting. I don't know what to say because obviously you did see something, but what was it that you saw? Hmm, I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's very interesting that you saw a large dragonfly like insect, and there just happened to be one that also lived there years and years ago. Hmm. Let's continue with another flying creature. Miss Gothic says, and this is also from Tales from the Comments number 2. In 2000, I lived in Burlington, North Carolina. I was eating lunch with my sister and her kids at Applebee's. I was looking out the window and I'm staring at this huge thing flying at the same altitude as a single engine plane and as big as a single engine plane. It wasn't a plane because it was flying in a pattern a bird would fly. I said to my sister, "What is that?" She agreed with me that it was not a plane and it was huge. Unfortunately, it was too high in the sky to see details of its features. At the time, I never thought it would be a pterodactyl, but now hearing about these sightings, I think that's exactly what it was. That's cool. It is very hard when you have huge flying bird sightings, and there's an episode of Monster Quest that goes into this because it's hard to see how big the creature is unless you have a point of reference, right? But I appreciate you sharing what you saw. It's a very, very interesting thing that was seen in 2000. Let's see here. This is from user Eric. A friend and I were driving to a remote area full of deer that I had scouted for 2 years. It was 20 plus miles behind a limited access locked gate, and I had a key. About 4 miles of my hunting spot, the road closed in on my Volkswagen Bug. I had about 2 feet of clearance on either side of my car. The forest crowned, completing the tunnel effect about 10 feet above the road. There were gaps between the trees and areas of the tunnel. It was around 2:30 a.m. Because of the old road conditions, was driving slow about 1 to 2 miles per hour. A tall creature emerged from the break in the trees to my left. I breaded instantly, and the creature in front of my Bug had placed his or her or its hands on either side of my bonnet hood. We three exchanged surprised looks. After seconds that seemed endless, the creature lifted its hands and exited through a gap on the right. It was a perfect area for them to thrive, mostly invisible. I know why they are hard to spot based on my and my friends' encounters. That's really interesting. Eric, if you want to provide more info, I would love to know like what state or part of the world that remote area was in, if you can share that. If anyone else has had a situation happen to them where they were like in a limited access area, they were miles and miles away from civilization and they encountered something like this, please put that in the comments as well, or you can send me an email. I get this comment or something like it, about 10 of them every day on 4-year standoff with Sasquatch near Oregon, so I'm going to address it again. Never a single clear, discernible photo of these creatures. Um, Stay tuned. More info is coming. You don't want to miss future episodes on this channel. That's all I'm going to say. Here's some interesting comments that came in from user Lee. I believe this is on the Fred Roll episode. He left them on a few different, this individual left them on a few different episodes. Individual writes, many people here in East Tennessee have seen them. Greene County up closer, the Smokies. I'm from Washington State, and I was on the coast for the weekend to visit my father, who, by the way, lives in Ocean Shores, where there are hundreds of sightings every year. Yeah, that's for sure. Anyways, there's a coastal tribe whom has a body that they keep for cultural reasons. I won't say how I know here, but it is a known fact among coastal natives from that part of the state. Okay, let's focus on that for a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. If anyone wants to share more info about that, and I'm guessing it won't be in the comments, you can email me, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Lee, I would love to chat with you as well. You can send me an email the same place. Lee also goes on to share another comment. Incredible, most incredible story I've heard yet. We grew up with them screaming in the summer, echoing through the Snoqualmie Valley. Apologies if I mispronounced that. My father saw one in Olympic National Park. They are all over Washington State and East Tennessee, where I now live. Lee, you've got to have some incredible stories. I would love to chat with you. Please reach out. Here's an interesting comment. User Sasqua. I'm so glad Fred is telling about your Urale. I can't even try to pronounce that. I apologize. Or hairy man not being a forest friend. My Yupik grandmother said they're dangerous, especially to women, children, and elders. Let me know in the comments about if you have any encounters or if you have any stories you've heard to back up that the hairy man is a dangerous individual, not a forest friend, or if you've heard the opposite. Let me know. You can also feel free to share any stories, and this goes out to any listeners that are hearing this. Got a few emails to share with you in this episode. They're both from the same individual. I don't believe I've read the first one before. Here we go. It's titled Jester's Sasquatch Encounters. First off, thank you for noticing my comments on the live stream. Before I tell you my encounter, I give you approval to share my story and forgive me for my punctuation and grammar. The year is 2000. I just turned 16. My grandmother has most of her relatives living in Minnesota all over. I've never been there. Now, my grandfather has been going up to Mills Locks Lake and fishing for the past 30 years with my Uncle Redmond, who is Native American. My Uncle Redmond had a lake house up on Big Pine Lake, not too far from Millie Locks Lake. My grandfather wanted to wait until I was old enough to start taking me up to Minnesota and go fishing and experience the great outdoors. I was a city country kid and had grown up in Indiana. I'd never experienced the true outdoors. Me and my grandfather drove from Indiana to Minnesota. Fast forward to arriving at my Uncle Redmond's cabin. I never experienced true darkness until we got out of the city limits and traveling down the long dirt roads to his cabin on the lake. Now, there were other people living on the lake, and yes, it got busy with fishermen and people swimming and having a good time. Once night fell, the only lights you had was all the cabin lights and stars lighting up the night. We had planned to stay up there for about a week or so, met all my relatives for the first time as a teenager, went fishing at Black Lake, Big Pine, and Millie Locks Lake. A lot of the cousins were staying in the motorhomes or sleeping up at the farmhouse. And I slept at the cabin the first few nights. Then I hung out in my cousin's smaller camper they had. It was a normal night like no other, and I decided I would sleep in the camper that night. Between 2 to 3 a.m., I was woken to a large thud to the side of the camper that had woken me up real fast. I woke up my cousin I woke my cousin up saying, "Did you feel that and hear that?" My mind was racing, thinking maybe a bear, but it would have to be a large bear. Now, the travel trailer was about 30 feet long and roughly 10 feet tall. To move that, like that, would have had to been something great in size. I knew it was something large. My heart was beating out of my chest with fear, and I knew it was a human because a human couldn't do that. I'd gotten enough guts to look out the window, and it was one of the smaller ones that a little higher up than the others. I'm looking and I can see the sky lit up with huge stars and just a little light coming from the front of the farmhouse about 150 feet away. What I saw crouching down was something I'd never seen before. It wasn't a bear because I could see its long arms and human shaped body. Now its hair was black as the night. Now it could have had color in the hair but it was too dark to see any colors. I think it sensed my fear because it turned its head and looked at me through the window. Its eyes glowed yellow red. The yellow was so bright. I was frozen because I did not know its intentions or what it was doing, and I honestly felt like it was taking a rest for a moment. It seemed like it had been running because it was breathing heavily and loud enough that I felt it. When watching this thing, I felt as if time had stopped, and I was in a weird trance like moment. It growled once, but low, letting me know don't even try anything or I'll put you in your place. The whole time this is going on, my cousin somehow fell back asleep. I pulled myself away from the window, trying to wake him back up, but nothing. I went back to the window, and now this thing was standing up. Now I know how tall it was because it was close enough to the travel trailer camper that I could see it was the same height. The very strange thing is when it was standing up, the night sky had bounced off of him or her, unveiling skin through the hair. His hair was long, thick, and hung off of him, her. He had a very thick neck that went into the shoulders. The creature reminded, if you had stretched out, a silverback gorilla about 3 feet. Then I watched this go from standing to running off so fast and so quietly that you did not hear anything. When morning came, there was about 4 black Labrador dogs smelling out the area. My relatives had black Labrador retrievers. I looked at the outside of the travel trailer camper and seen a huge dent and scratch marks with a weird black charcoal like substance, maybe just dirt. I was so scared to tell anyone. My cousin told everyone that I'd seen the hairy man, but everyone went on their day like it was nothing as I felt so shooken and different inside my soul. When I went back home, I did not tell anyone. I didn't want to be laughed at. It took me 23 years to tell this story out loud, and it feels good. People need to know that we are not alone. Thank you for your time. Hopefully, this story encounter was good enough. I do have another story the following years later in 2003, but that can be another time. I don't think I left anything out of this story. Have a good day. Wow. Chester, thank you for sharing that. That's a wild story. I'm really curious about the black charcoal like substance that was maybe just dirt. If listeners, if you experience anything like you heard in this story, let me know in the comments or you can send it to me. And we've got another story from the same individual that was just sent in. I'll go ahead and read it out. Hello, not sure if you remember me in my story I shared from Minnesota. Well, I recently heard a story that was told to me and a couple others. About a week ago, a dear old friend of the family was on his last days where we were sharing stories back and forth, and I know he had spent a lot of time out in the woods when he was a young man. I told him about your Bigfoot channel on YouTube. Thank you. Of course, he didn't know much about YouTube, but he did have a few stories about Bigfoot and other creatures. The one story he told me I cannot get out of my head, as it's a strange one. He said sometime in the early 1960s, he was out camping up in Canada with a friend. He had been going up there for years fishing, a little hunting, and enjoying the great outdoors. He never gave me the exact coordinates of the location because he was on his last days and very sick. Where he camped up on a mountain, you could see a great vast opening of trees for many miles. He said one afternoon him and his friend were packing up, getting everything ready to head back home after a week in the wilderness. They get everything into the truck and start heading back down on the long dirt roads. His friend notices something strange out the window in the distance through the trees. He tells him, "Did you see that?" He said, "No." He said, "Stop the car now." They both get out of the car, and his friends looked right there. They both were staring at a big, hairy creature carrying a black bear over its shoulder and walking with a human. Now, supposedly, the distance was estimated a football field away. They stood there shocked and didn't know what to do or say. Why would a human man be walking with a big, hairy creature? They think that the hairy creature had to be about 9 feet in height. They think that the black bear that was on the shoulder of the creature had to be at least a couple 100 pounds. The one thing they noticed, the human walking with the hairy creature looked like a Native American. No shirt on and a lot of paint on its skin, carrying a bow and arrow. Now, most people would not believe this, but I honestly do, especially coming from a 91-year-old man that had nothing to gain from anything and was just sharing an experience he had. They stood and watched for 15 minutes, give or take, until the beings disappeared in the wilderness. Imagine if you had had a video or photo of that. He told me the experience he never told anyone besides only him and his friend knowing. Back in the 60s, people would have thought he was crazy if he told anyone that, and also feeling like it was a dream, but in reality, he had seen something he just can't explain. I figured to share the story because I thought it was not only crazy, but a wild story you'd never heard of. Have a good day, sir, and keep up all the good work on the channel. Thank you, Jester. I appreciate you writing in with another story. It's stories like this that are barely told because the person shares them at the end of their life. I, I really appreciate you taking the time to share stories that would otherwise be lost. And I'm glad that we can share stories like this on the channel. Again, to all the listeners, thank you for taking the time to listen, to making Bigfoot Society part of your day. If you've got any Bigfoot encounters that you've been holding off on because you're afraid of how people will react, Bigfoot Society is a safe and place, and we respect you and your story. You're welcome to, of course, leave it in the comments, or you can send me your story or encounter in my email, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And if you don't like email, I do have a phone where you can text me or send me a voice message. It's 515-809-0165. Thank you so much all for listening, and I will see you next time.